So we can look at inequality index, for example. Of course, this is the Oxfam report. Top 1% own more than 40.5% of total wealth in 2021. Bottom 50% own 3% of total wealth in 2021. And billionaires' wealth surged 121% since the pandemic. So there is that inequality index, which may not look good. But when I look at physical infrastructure numbers, when you look at roads, when you look at railways, clearly the government has got its act together on physical infrastructure, Prasenjit Bose. Would you agree, therefore, that there is much, therefore, that the government can claim as achievements, and there are other areas, particularly overcoming the inequality index, which is a long-term challenge? Do you concede that it would be unfair to harshly judge the government one way or the other?
Well, I think that first of all, let's focus on facts and figures, which are statistics provided by this own government. You just showed a graph starting from 2014-15. You start from 2004-5 and look at what has been the average growth rate under the two UPA governments and what has been the average growth rate under this government. And it is not only because of the COVID and the recession that followed, following that, but it's also because of the fact that this government has been pursuing policies like demonetization and inflicting shock after shock on the economy, which has disproportionately hurt the poorer sections of the people, the informal sector, especially. When one is talking about management of the COVID, I hope we have not forgotten the miserable condition of millions of informal sector migrant workers who died on their way back home. And we are talking about good management. Let us not forget that next to the United States, I think India had the second highest or the third highest casualty rate in the world because of COVID. So, this whole effort to actually forget about, conveniently forgetting about the unfortunate experiences of during this regime and just focusing upon the bright side, I don't think is a fair way of looking at it. But I would still agree with Swapan Dasgupta when he says that there has been exponential changes under this government. It has certainly not been in terms of economic progress, where I would see a decline as revealed by official statistics, unemployment and so on. But where the exponential progress has happened, as you just mentioned, in terms of inequality, why is it happening? It is because of crony capitalism. This government came on the promise of fighting corruption, and it is so ridiculous that Mr. Dasgupta today is finding a reduction in corruption when India today has been discussed all over the world for an Indian businessman having pulled the greatest fraud in the history of world capitalism. And today, unfortunately, there has also been an exponential erosion of democracy and democratic institutions in our country.
I'll come to those points. I'll come to democracy, democratic rights later. But you're saying, therefore, that you believe that this Achhe Din promise, which was promised on sort of getting rid of corruption or building a corruption-free India,
it is only Achhe Din for Gautam Adani and his ilk.
Okay.
Achhe Din for Adani.
Okay, it's you for. Okay, let's
not
come
only
to specifics.
That's for the entire country to see.
Okay, let's come to specifics. Has Indian economy realized its potential? Dr. Bhalla, why don't you kick this off? Because the fact is, you in your reports have claimed extreme poverty has come down. You've claimed that this government on this show itself has overperformed even in difficult times like COVID at the end of the day. But there are others who are pointing out, like Professor Gowda, even pre-COVID, India experienced successive quarters of declining growth. Unemployment remains a serious challenge for this government. Will you concede that the Indian economy hasn't realized its potential, even though, particularly the early years between 2014 to 18, with oil prices being low, this government had huge opportunities. Instead, with demonetization, it missed some of those opportunities, many believe. How do you see an overall report card?
Yeah. So, look, I just want to go back to when you asked Professor Gowda the question as to what was his evidence on that poverty had gone up, and he produced the evidence of the Oxfam report and number of billionaires going up. Now, there seems to be a basic misunderstanding of what absolute poverty means. Absolute poverty has to do with the incomes or consumption level of the poorest. You can take it 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. But you can't talk about the billionaires have gone up and therefore poverty has gone up. So that's clarification number one. On the numbers, if you want to compare, which is very good, I have done it in several papers, 2004-13 to 2014 and now, either you believe that India is an island, or you believe we are part of a global economy which is increasingly becoming integrated, not less. Then you have to look at what's happening in the world. And therefore, when you do that, you find that the gap between India's growth rate and the world growth rate was much larger when 2004 to 13 than now. Sorry, was much lower. So we have outperformed relative to our own past and relative to other economies. That takes care. Then we come to the unemployment. I can go down the list of each of those numbers. You yourself mentioned infrastructure, the great development that has taken place in infrastructure, and basically the pictures are emphasizing that. So I want to, we can have a debate on opinions, or we can have a discussion about what the facts are and what they mean.
No, the facts are that the economy, was declining for successive quarters. Do you agree that the facts are that the economy was declining for successive quarters between 2017 and 19?
Rajni, we have been on shows many, many times, right? I enjoy every one of them. But the growth having declined in successive quarters has nothing to do with the price of tomatoes. We are talking about the welfare of the people, how their living standards have gone up. Infrastructure, you yourself have emphasized, is a big part of that. So the fact that the growth has declined for 4 or 5 quarters, c'est la vie, such is life.
Okay. Okay, let me therefore look at some of Mr. Modi's big economic decisions, Professor Gowda. Whether it is
from 2009-10 to 2013-14, just look at the decline in real growth in India. Okay, during that period. So I can pick up, that. You can pick up whatever quarters you want.